Hi there, I'm Namish Patel Owen, and you're listening to Live Your True Self, episode number 82. After 18 years doing corporate, in 2018, it became about doing me, doing what I love. Not that long ago, I too felt a deep desire to be something more, asking myself, who am I anyway, and what's my purpose? Full of self-doubt and fear of failure, fast forward to this moment and you'll see a version of me that's true to myself, calm, confident and clearer than ever before, despite the drama. Inspired by Krishna's words in the Bhagavad Gita, one must deliver himself with the help of the mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. So perspective is everything. No matter where you are on your personal growth journey as a high achiever, I'm here to guide you. Together, we'll step out of your head, the busyness in your mind, and drop into your heart, the space where lasting transformation begins, so that you too can awaken your true self and live life more meaningfully in this moment, even in the messiness. Take a deep breath and listen on in. Hello. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. How are you? I hope you're well. Today we are talking about something that can change the way we move through life, and that's the power of pausing. We live in a world that tells us to keep going, to push on through, and this idea of don't stop. But what if I told you that the real insight and growth comes when we slow down, and that by pausing we actually gain clarity, energy, and momentum? Pausing is not about doing nothing. It's about creating space for everything that truly matters. In the stillness, we reconnect with our mind, body, and soul, with life and with the wisdom that's always been within us. When we pause, we shift from reacting to responding, from rushing to receiving, and from merely existing to deeply living. And this is why I'm dedicating Mindful March to intentional pauses, moments of breath, meditation, yoga, to really lean into presence and calm, peace and awareness. Whether it's feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin, truly tasting my food, or listening to the quiet whispers of my heart, I'm choosing to slow down and go within so I can move forward with clarity, purpose, and connection. Because when we pause, life meets us right where we are. Look out for my Mindful March yoga journey on social media. I'll be sharing all the precious moments of breath and movement and mindfulness as I go within and deepen my practice. So I would invite you to join me in slowing down to move forward with intention. Today I'm sharing 10 insights I've learned from the power of pausing. And these are insights that have transformed how I show up in life, in business, as a parent, in my relationships, just as a whole in life. And so if you've ever felt overwhelmed, stuck in autopilot, or like you're constantly running but never truly arriving, this episode is for you. So let's dive in. First of all, I'm going to just talk quickly about what is pausing, why we should pause, and then I'll go into my 10 insights that hopefully inspire you and spark something in you to practice the power of pause. And then I'll share how to practice pausing so you can actually put it into practice and do it right away. And actually, it's really simple. So stay tuned. So, what is pausing? Pausing isn't about doing nothing, right? Let's be clear, because there is a tendency, and this is something certainly that I thought, that pausing means doing nothing, like slowing down, doing nothing, and my brain just could not get on board with that. And that's not what it's about. Pausing is about creating space for something positive to unfold, right? Or something useful and something meaningful to unfold. And it's that intentional moment where we stop the rush, we take a breath and check in. And it could be a single deep inhale before responding in a conversation, or sleeping on something and then responding the next day. Or perhaps it's a longer pause to reflect on a particular decision, or where you're heading in a situation, or generally in life, right? So it's not about doing nothing. It's actually about pausing for insight, right? Pausing for something meaningful, something positive, something useful, something, like a message or a realization or a perspective that you need to see and feel. And also, pausing isn't about losing time. It's about reclaiming it. And when you do, amazing things start to happen internally, like within, and then externally in the world around you, in your circumstances, in your work, in your relationships, like whatever it might be. And I like to use the analogy here, which is like always something I lean into, which is slow and steady wins the race. And so pausing may well slow you down because of the act of pausing. You're not pushing on through, as I said earlier, but you will move leaps and bounds in a profound way that you wouldn't be able to had you not paused. And also you'll go in a direction that feels more aligned, more thought through, more intentional, and allow you to do it from an energy of clarity and confidence, knowing what you're doing. So that's what pausing is, by sort of describing what pausing isn't. And so why do we pause? Like, why does pausing even matter? In my experience, we either choose to pause, or we're sometimes forced to pause, usually by burnout, exhaustion, or life throwing us some sort of curveball and some sort of life experience. And I describe this as a gift wrapped in sandpaper, but sometimes this is what can happen. And we've all hit a wall where our body and mind just says, like, enough, I am done. And that's a forced pause, like where your body, either you get sick, or in a big way, or you continually get sick, or you just keep getting like I would say reactions, but like your body keeps coming up with a resistance to your current situation, which is you pushing on through until you're forced to pause. Because you just physically can't, like your body can't continue. And that's a forced pause. But what if we didn't wait for that breaking point, or, that kind of almost feeling of rock bottom? What if we chose to intentionally pause and gave ourselves the gift of pausing from a place of wisdom, knowing the power that it holds, knowing how useful and how progressive the act of pausing can actually be? Because without pausing, we're on autopilot, going through the motions, reacting instead of responding. We eat without truly tasting or acknowledging what we're eating, speak without thinking, and kind of move through life without fully experiencing the goodness that's right in front of us. And it's like sleepwalking through our own beautiful story of life. And that's not what we're here for. We're not here to sleepwalk through life. We are here to be involved in life and to experience life to its fullest in what we've been given, and to really live it fully and kind of totally. And I would argue that is actually the purpose. That is our purpose in life, is to live. And that's a whole nother episode, podcast episode. But yeah, our purpose in life is to live. But when we pause, right, when we gift ourselves the power of pausing, something shifts. Instead of being on autopilot and sleepwalking, we wake up. We come alive. We notice something deeper within us, and therefore something deeper and more meaningful around us. We see beyond the limiting beliefs that usually shape our actions. We reset, we reconnect, and we open ourselves to more. And we realize we have more control than we thought to choose what happens next. Because from pausing, the thing that comes is insight, right? Pausing equals insight. No matter what the insight is, it is an insight, and it will inform and allow you to choose intentionally and consciously and more aligned with you what you do next. And so that's why we pause. And so that brings me to my 10 biggest insights from pausing, the real shifts that I've experienced over time that you can too. And as I share these personal insights, I would invite you to reflect on how this could be your growth too. Maybe one of these insights speaks directly to something you're going through. Maybe it sparks a new perspective or a small shift that could make a big difference in your life. Just ask yourself, how does this apply to me where I'm at? And be sure to take that away with you. So let's dive in. When you pause, you gain insight. So here are my top 10 that hopefully inspire you to practice the power of the pause. Number 1, clarity emerges. When we stop, the noise in our mind settles. It's like a muddy glass of water finally becoming clear. I remember a time in my business when I felt quite stuck. I had so many ideas swirling around in my head, and the more I tried to force a decision, the more overwhelmed I became. And I just kept stuck, and it was almost like spinning around in circles. And instead of pushing through the frustration and almost like the disappointment of not making progress, I did what my yoga teacher taught me. I paused. I stepped back, took some deep breaths, and allowed myself to sit with the uncertainty instead of fighting it. And I connected with my heart. I let go of the pressure to have it all figured out and simply gave it space. And it did take some time, but over time, the answers came. Not in a rush, not in the overthinking, not even in the actions, but actually in the stillness. And so clarity doesn't always come from doing. And that's certainly my experience. It comes from allowing, from creating space for something more aligned and more meaningful to unfold. Number 2, we notice how we really feel. So I used to tell myself I was just busy, juggling work, family, and my fitness and my wellness and everything in between. But when I started pausing, I realized it wasn't just busyness. I was actually overwhelmed. And it was like a constant state of rushing around from one thing to the next thing that I had mistaken for being productive. And pausing made me see what was really going on beneath the surface. And the tension in my shoulders, the frog in my throat, and the unsettled belly and gut, the shallow breaths, the tightness in my chest, all signals my body had been sending me, but I was too distracted or too busy, quote unquote, to notice. So pausing gave me the insight of really noticing how I was feeling. And it's something you can practice, like literally right now. So if you just pause and take a moment to just ground yourself, take a deep breath. What emotions are sitting in your body right here, right now? What comes up for you when I invite you to explore that? Are you holding tension somewhere? If so, can you locate it? And just paying attention a little bit inwards. And your breath. What's your breath doing? Is it shallow like mine? Is it racing? Is it deep? Is it in your belly or is it high up in your chest? You get to pause and check in with yourself at any time, anywhere. And when we pause, we meet ourselves where we are, no matter what we're feeling. Whatever the emotions are, its positive intention is welcome. So even if you're feeling disappointment, there is a positive intention behind the feeling that we get to tune into and explore in order to move through the disappointment. And that's the first step to real change. Noticing how we really feel. Number 3, my insight, we listen to our body's cue. And this builds on actually to the second one. So, how often do we eat just because it's time to eat? Not because we're actually hungry, or grab a snack because we're bored or stressed or just on autopilot, and it's just maybe a habitual thing that we turn to. I started pausing before meals, simply taking a breath and asking myself, am I really hungry? Or is this just a habit? And honestly, sometimes I wasn't hungry at all. I was just looking for comfort or a distraction or a break or something to go with my cup of tea. I like to have something with my tea. Tea and cake is the best. But sometimes I don't need cake, or actually, I could go for something else. But that small pause made me more aware of what my body actually needed in the moment. And sometimes it does need fuel and substance. And that's okay. Like we get to have the treats, we get to have the goodness and the treats. That's not a problem. But the point is giving your body what you need, because sometimes our body needs a rest from the intake. And you've heard me before on this podcast talk about fasting and intermittent fasting. And, this is really where that comes from, which is allowing my gut to reset and allowing my body to tune into helping me in other areas of my body that needs healing, versus trying to keep my digestive system functioning and progressing, because obviously I've had an intake. And it's the same for rest. How often do we feel tired but push through anyway? We ignore the signals, override the exhaustion, and just keep going until we have a crash or hit rock bottom, or have burnout or get sick. And when we pause, we hear our body is telling us something. And when we listen, we can give it what it actually needs, not just what we've been conditioned to give it and to do. And it will be different on different days. It will be different based on your circumstances. It will be different because of your monthly cycle. Like, just notice what your body needs. That, it's never going to be a set way. And this is why it's so important to listen to our body's cues. Number 4, we hear the wisdom within. Our heart already knows what our mind is overthinking. Let me say that again. Our heart already knows what our mind is overthinking. But if we're often rushing around onto the next thing and the next thing, often filling the space, we can miss what our heart knows. And I've made some of my biggest life decisions, like stepping fully into yoga lifestyle, into meditation and coaching, and, growing my mind, body, and soul by finally pausing long enough to listen to my heart. And I remember going back and forth, questioning myself, like seeking advice, overthinking every little detail. But deep down, I already knew. I was just too busy doubting myself, probably in my mind, to hear the truth, which was in my heart. And so now I'm all about following my heart. And recently I've made a decision to step back into the business and really go all in on yoga and mindset and meditation, and really showing up and serving from a place in my heart, by hearing the wisdom within. And it was loud and clear. And I'm so grateful to have honoured that. And the moment we stop looking for answers on the outside and we get quiet on the inside, clarity unfolds. Like the answer is just there and you will hear it loud and clear. And I know this because I've experienced it, and I would love for you to experience it too. And I would just say your answers have been there all along, like they are there within you right now. I would just invite you to listen and honor the wisdom within, and know that your inner wisdom is always speaking. The question is, are you giving yourself space to hear it? Insight number 5, you become present to life's beauty. So let me ask you, have you been caught up in your day that you completely missed what was happening around you? That used to be me quite often, I have to say. For years, I was in this constant doing mode, focused on achieving, ticking things off my to-do list, always on to the next thing and the next thing. And slowing down wasn't even a thought until I was forced to. And sickness made me stop. And for the first time, I found myself simply taking walks because I could, and there was a lot that I couldn't do. But that's when I heard them. Birds singing outside. The dialogue and exchange between these beautiful creatures, loud and clear like never before. And they'd always been there. But I'd been too distracted and focused on other things to truly notice and appreciate the beautifulness of it. And it made me wonder, like, what else am I missing? So pausing isn't about adding something new to your life. It can also be about finally noticing what's already there. The beauty, the growth, the abundance, the little everyday moments that make life feel full and meaningful. And when we slow down, we don't just exist, we actually experience life with all our five senses consciously and in a way that really allows for connection internally and externally. Number 6, this is a good insight of mine. Your mind's stories become clear. We all have that tape playing in our minds. The same story we tell ourselves over and over without sometimes even realizing it. And for me, it was the story of I don't have enough time. Or it was like there's too much to do. And it ran on repeat, always in the background, dictating my actions, my decisions, and therefore my energy. But here's the thing, when I finally paused and took a step back, I saw that story for what it was. Just a thought, just a boring old story, not the truth. It wasn't real. It was just something I had told myself over and over and over, which became a belief that was just not useful. And by simply pausing and questioning that story, I was able to replace it with a new, more empowering one that said, I have time for what matters. And in terms of the one about there's too much to do, it was a new and empowering thought of there will always be things to do, and that's okay. And so it wasn't about time management or action management, but more about mind management. Pausing gave me the space to recognize the stories, the unhelpful stories we tell ourselves that don't have to be permanent. We can rewrite them anytime. And that comes from pausing to notice what stories you're telling yourself in the first place. Number 7, how we interact with ourselves deepens. Have you ever caught yourself speaking to yourself in a way you'd never speak to a friend or a loved one? From my experience, my inner dialogue used to be harsh, pushing myself to do more, be better, work harder. I'd criticize myself for not getting it sooner and not being further along and further ahead. And the worst part, I didn't even realize I was doing it. But when I started coaching and practicing pausing, I finally noticed. I heard, like truly heard, the way I spoke to myself. And that awareness changed everything. Instead of immediately judging myself, I learned to meet myself where I was. And then over time, I learned to meet myself with kindness and compassion, letting go of years of self-judgment. I started asking, what do I need right now, rather than what more can I do? You spend the most time with yourself. Make it a good place to be. pausing helps us turn that inner space into one that lifts up rather than drags us down. And it's not just about slowing down, it's about deepening the way we treat ourselves from a place of love versus criticism and fear. When we pause, we give ourselves the same patience, understanding, and care that we so freely give to others, and that changes everything. So, this was a big insight for me, interacting with myself in a much deeper way and really improving the relationship with myself. Number 8, we gain the power to choose. So, here, have you ever said something in frustration to a colleague or your loved one or a friend and immediately wished you could take it back? I remember a time when my husband and I were having one of those tense conversations, and it's the kind where you're both tired, usually for us, a little snappy, a little short, and you're not really tuned into how the other person is feeling. You're a bit self-focused and not compassionate, not empathetic to the other person. And he said something that rubbed me the wrong way, and I reacted, and I caught myself, and the urge to continue reacting or to stay in that energy became clear. And the urge to react being like this idea to fire back with a sharp response, short and sharp response. But in that split second, I paused, I noticed, I took a deep breath, and instead of continuing reacting from tiredness and irritation, I chose to listen, and I chose to be calm and just center myself and ground myself. And just like that, the energy shifted. So, what could have turned into a continued heated situation and probably unpleasant became an actual heart to heart moment where we were able to just be honest with where we were and how we were feeling. And something I read in a book recently was that we always get to say, I'm sorry, even if you're not in the wrong. And it's a hard thing sometimes to do that, but actually, it just takes the heat out of a situation and neutralizes any of the negative energy. And so if I'm the one to say sorry, even if I'm not wrong, I've got no problem with that. I've made peace with that. So awareness is the precursor to choice. When we pause, we give ourselves the power to respond rather than react. We give ourselves the power to notice, right? That is awareness, noticing. And that single choice in the moment can change the entire dynamics of the circumstance, the situation, and a relationship. So pausing gives us the power to choose. Number 9 is that you can find gratitude and abundance. And for me, gratitude isn't just something we write in a journal, it's something we feel. And the only way to truly feel it is to slow down long enough and intentionally enough to actually notice the sensation in our body, to actually feel the gratitude emanate and radiate within. And I used to think gratitude had to be a big, profound thing, and like something quite I don't know, meaningful. But I've learned that gratitude lives in the smallest moments and ones that we often overlook. Just like when I pause for a few seconds and take in the sound of the kids' laughter or their reflections, or when I step outside and feel the radiant sun on my skin, realizing how good that simple warmth feels, or when I wrap my hands around a warm cup of tea and take a moment to breathe, or when I have a squeezy cuddle with my kiddos and with Steve, and it just makes me melt. So pausing brings us into the present, and when we're present, we see and can feel just how much there is to be grateful for, and that the feeling of gratitude can really come alive from within. But we have to allow ourselves to see it and feel it. And that shift from lack to abundance, from rushing to receiving, and from autopilot to pausing and noticing is everything. Last but not least, number 10, pausing creates creativity and connection to the heart. Have you ever sat staring at your screen, willing a good idea to come, only to feel even more stuck the harder you push? I know that feeling too well, forcing myself to figure things out, thinking that more effort would bring me closer to the answer and where I need to be, but it never did. My best ideas, they've never come in those moments of forcing and pushing myself. They've come when I paused and reflected. Like when I went out for a walk, letting my mind drift, or in the shower when there's nothing to do but just be, or of course during meditation when the mental noise fades and you can connect with your breath, and suddenly and beautifully clarity appears. Because when we pause, we don't just make space for creativity, we make space to connect with our hearts. And our heart carries a deeper wisdom that logic alone cannot access. It's where our most inspired ideas, aligned decisions, and our truest nature come from. And so pausing isn't wasting time, it's making space. It's allowing creativity to flow, inspiration to land, and your heart's guidance and goodness to come alive. And so if you're feeling stuck, step away. Step away from the laptop, the screen, the spreadsheet, the to-do list, the project, like whatever it is, step away. Breathe, right? Take a deep breath. Connect with the power of the breath. Place your hand on your heart. If that feels right for you, trust that when you stop chasing the answer and your heart's wisdom will find you. So they are my 10 insights from pausing. There's a bit of overlap, and clearly they are all linked in some way. I hope you managed to take what resonates for you and really think about how these insights can be true for you if you practice the power of pausing. So how do you actually do that? Let's just spend a quick moment on here, and you, as I say, it's super simple and you won't be surprised to hear what I'm going to say. Few steps. Step number 1, breathe. One deep inhale and exhale can shift everything. That in itself is a pause. You can do it for one breath, you can do it for multiple breaths, you can do it for a few minutes, you can do it for longer. You decide based on where you're at in the moment. Number 2, check in with yourself. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And if you can't access the feeling, you can ask yourself, what am I thinking right now? That will give you an idea of where your mind and your body is at for you to take an informed next step. Number 3, notice, right? Based on asking yourself these questions, connecting with your breath, notice to help you take your next best move. Right? So you want to respond versus react by doing this. Number 4 is savor the moment, like bring yourself into that present moment where you're pausing. And you can do that by staying connected to your breath, or just finding something you're grateful for, or grounding yourself by coming up with an anchor, whatever that might be. And it might be just feet on the floor, or I am here, or I am in the present. I mean, you can even say that, right? So practice being in the present through the act of pausing. And number 5, create space. Create space to allow the pause to guide you. And again, that could be a split second, it could be a little bit longer, and you can be intentional about it, but create the space to pause in your day. Being intentional about it. It doesn't have to be long. As I say, even one conscious pause a day can transform your experience of life, your relationships, your energy, like whatever it is that you are wanting to reflect on or pause for, will help. So as we wrap up, let me share Rumi's words. The quieter you become, the more you are able to hear. Stillness opens us up to deeper insights, clarity, and connection with the divine. And these words remind us that pausing isn't empty, It's where life's deepest truths unfold, should you let them. So what happens when we pause? We see clearly, we feel deeply, and we can live fully. So I invite you to take just one pause today. Straight after we're done here, take the pause. Or maybe you do it before your next meal, before replying to an email or a message or making a decision. Or as I say, literally, as soon as we're done here, do it right now. Just stop, breathe, notice, and let that guide your next best move. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Live Your True Self. If this resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who needs to hear this. And if you haven't yet, take a moment to rate and review the podcast. It helps me so much in spreading this message and sharing the wisdom within to inspire others on their spiritual path. And remember the power of the pause. Until next week, keep shining your light and may you always live your true self. Namaste. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Live Your True Self podcast. If you're ready to dive deeper into your spiritual growth journey, visit me at www.namishapatelowen.com to learn more about my work and how I can support you. Be sure to sign up for Monday Mindset Mail, a weekly love note to inspire who you're being while you're doing. And you're also welcome to join my free community, Mindset Yoga with Namisha, where we'll grow and connect together. It's an honor to guide you in reconnecting with who you truly are. Bye for now.